You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I will be your podcast host for today. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to episode number 17 of the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. Today, we're having a return guest, LJ, who originally was on episode number 5. And after I had published that episode, both of us listened back to it and realized that there were some pretty big gaps that we wanted to cover, questions that I had that I was afraid to push on, and from LJ's perspective, it sounded like he felt that he was skimping out on some of the answers. And so we had set plans to circle back and revisit our interview and to go into more depth around things that we thought were missing from the first one. Episode 5 was early on in the podcast, and we were still finding our comfort level of what we wanted to accomplish and how much to actually share. The questions that I had around LJ's childhood were pretty dark and hard to know where the boundary line was in order to cover that on a public forum. And looking back, we thought we could cover it in a better way on this episode. Normally here in the intro section, I like to do a reading from one of our literature books. But during the interview, we actually read a little bit out of LJ's book and out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I felt that those readings in the interview kind of filled what I usually do in this portion. So I am going to forgo doing a reading here at the beginning and just cut straight to the interview. When I started recording on Zoom, we were talking about my green screen background for Zoom, and I had been setting up for the talent show for the convention, in which I've got a different background that I usually use, which is Alex Gray's Net of Being. Tool fans will recognize the artwork from Tool's album 10,000 Days. And the beginning of the interview, I was talking about wanting to have that artwork tattooed at some point in my life. So anyone that wants to look it up can get a visualization of what we were actually talking about before we got into the meat of our conversation. So anyway, here's the interview. I hope you enjoy it. Trying to get myself all situated. I'm going to switch back to my regular background, which is this one.
Okay.
If I ever have the money, time, and patience, I want to get that thing tattooed on my shoulder. But
nice.
But yeah,
that's a healthy piece.
Yeah. So a lot of people I've seen someone that had that on their entire back.
Oh.
Yeah, that's got to be quite a few hours to do that, and I just don't have the money or patience to do that. So
it's definitely for me. I can sit. I'm working on a sleeve on my arm.
Ooh, nice.
And it's cartoons of fish.
Nice.
And,
yeah.
Little guys, and it's getting finished off by the original artist coming up.
Oh, cool.
And I know that's going to be. I can sit for about 2.5. 3 hours at the most, and then he has to stop. I just can't take it anymore.
Yeah. All right, so I got one more setting to go through here, and there it is. And yep, we're good there. So some of the things that I wanted to see what you wanted to talk about, and the things that I wanted to talk about that we didn't cover in the first round.
Well, why don't we go with the things that you wanted to talk about in the first round that we didn't talk about?
Okay.
And I'll just follow from there.
Yeah. So one of the things I've been doing lately is doing inner, middle, and outer circle.
Okay.
So, and then there are a couple of stories and adventures in the book that we started touching on and just kind of briefly skimmed over and went on to other things. I re-listened to the first episode that we did, and
it was pretty tame.
It was tame, but it was fucking good. There was there was a lot of stuff that we covered. So
yeah,
it's always good.
Well, for me, talking about inner circle, outer circle, middle circle, inner circle for me is dressing up and sex outside my marriage, and that's it, because there isn't anything else. Middle circle, I have masturbation with compulsion.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't much really in there either. And then everything is outer circle. I'm pretty cut and dry. That's why I've been able to maintain such a high or long recovery, because I don't have the things in my circles are pretty distinct. And it's not like masturbation with pornography, because pornography and masturbation, they're outer circle behaviors. I don't have a problem with that. My sponsor doesn't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. My life continues and everything's fine. But through introspection, I've done a lot of work, and those two things, dressing up and having sex outside my marriage, are those two things that are definitely crossing the boundaries. And I'm okay with that. Hasn't shown up in 16 and a half years.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm very grateful for that. Just grateful for the program. It's given me the boundaries to create all that.
Yeah.
And, but moving forward, it's gotten to be the outer circle. It just keeps growing, because the inner circle it used to be a daily compulsion.
Yeah. And once you're not doing that stuff, what are you going to do with the time that you've got?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. Filling it up with good outer circle stuff, and, being on meetings, doing step work. And I know you had mentioned you're going to be going out fishing in a couple weeks.
Next Wednesday.
Nice.
Down here, tarpon fishing is known as one of the big game fish. Game fish anywhere in the world, but tarpon are here in the United States. And I'm going tarpon fishing and looking forward to that. It'll be my first time. And it's in the same league as bluefin tuna.
Yeah.
So
how big are those?
They go 6, 7, 8 feet, 9 feet in the wild. You can go 200 pounds. I won't get a mount for one unless it's 5 foot.
Yeah.
Because it's just, even though it's a fiberglass fish, it's just the cost of it is prohibited. And
I bet.
won't do it. So, but if it's 5 foot, I'll get a mount. and
Nice.
I've got a spot in the back of my house for it. So we're all ready for it.
Nice. And for doing that, you go out on a boat?
Oh yeah. Go
Yeah.
out. We'll be going out in the Keys, down in Marathon, and it'll be an overnight. Get up at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, and go out in the morning. And the tarpon it is tarpon season right now. It's the last. It will be there's one more month, then it's over. So July is the end of the tarpon season. Um, but they're well stocked down there, and they've got some big ones.
Nice.
They've
Yeah.
some big
Just
ones.
thinking about boats and stuff. There was a retreat workshop that I went to where we talked about what brings you a sense of peace and stuff. And for me, it was water.
Mm,
Any form of water, whether it's the ocean, a creek, a lake, any body of water, I feel a sense of peace. So there, over the past year, I have really missed going out on a boat somewhere. So I'm envious of you, but I do have the Pacific Ocean right over the hill. So we've taken a couple drives over to the ocean recently and hung out at Santa Cruz, and hearing the beach waves and stuff bring me a sense of peace. So I'm sure that that's an outer circle thing for me. So being out there on the boat fishing, that's got to
yeah.
be kind of God's water country.
Oh yeah. I'm a water sign.
Oh,
My
nice.
So I'm a Cancer, and so it's always been in my life ever since my early years I can remember. Water's always been in my life, and I've always been at the ocean. And so it's yeah, I look forward to it. Being on the water is amazing for me.
Yeah,
Yeah, very tranquil.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that you and I have talked about since the first podcast that we had done is, that was, I think, my first one-on-one interview that I had done for the podcast. I've had a couple of people together and around a certain topic, and a lot of the one-on-ones that I've had have been with people that I've known for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just met you over the past year,
Yeah, that's correct.
and so one of the things, I know that you had written a book. I read the book, and reading the stories in there, um I was trying, it was my first time trying to coax out information from someone, and but not wanting to overstep boundaries, because some of the stuff in there is pretty hard. Yeah, pretty hard stuff. Um, and you listened back to the first podcast, and that we had done, and you had mentioned that you felt that there were areas that we could definitely delve deeper into.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that I had mentioned, that I recorded one of my first steps and wanted to use that, and it was too detailed, and I did not feel comfortable sharing that on the podcast. There was just too much detail.
Right.
Um, so when I recorded myself at one of the San Jose meetings doing a speaker share, I was able to push the boundaries enough that I got to talk about all the things that were in my inner circle, but without getting into details around it. So trying to overcome that fear of wanting to share stuff with everybody, but also knowing what to hold back. And
Mm.
so when I was interviewing you on that episode 5, um, there were details in your book that I wanted to cover, but I was afraid of pushing your boundaries. And so when we were talking, I would hint at something instead of, flat out ask you about. And in the months since, is we did that in February, and now it's towards the end of May. We had talked about doing a second episode where we can detail more stuff. So that being said, one of the first things I started talking about, and that with your comfort level, I had asked you about your experiences when you were 12 years old. Do you mind if I read?
No, go right ahead.
Yeah. So if I can find it. Yeah. So I'll just read this this one paragraph here. 4 or 5 months after Jim had befriended me and my two friends, he called one night and asked me if I would like to go on an overnight weekend trip to Delaware for a weekend of powerlifting events. And again, so this is Jim, who is an older man, a bodybuilder. And you were the age of 12 when this is going on. And I'm going to continue here. I was the only one who was given permission to go. My two friends' parents said no. I would get to join the fraternity. I was going to become something special, and it was secret. My dad had heard of this man from the weekend events that I had been attending. My mother, who pretty much had ignored me from the time I was 7 or 8, had no input on this trip. My father, having a bad marriage as it was, wasn't focused on his children much either. I figured my father let me go as to have one less worry in his hair for the weekend. Football on Sundays was his ritual. I didn't exist while it was on television, so there I was, cast off right into the arms of a man they had never met nor hear anything about until 6 long years later. Right. And that the details of what's to follow, I'm not going to get read verbatim from the book because you do get pretty graphic. But this was an older man who took you. Was it out of state?
He was out of state. It was cross. I mean, he would have been thrown in jail for crossing state boundaries and sex trafficking.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was pretty heavy felony that would have been against him. He was just a regular Joe businessman. And his deal was that he set up the contest with the AAU, the Amateur Athletic Union. And he set up the contest, the powerlifting contest. And when at 12 years old, that's what I was doing. I was doing the powerlifting contest, clean and jerk and snatch and deadlift. And so he was just this regular Joe. And he saw that I was aloof, that I didn't have the parental supervision that the others had. And I was an easy mark. And he groomed me. He groomed me for months. And when he took a shot, he took it. And off out of state, we went to Delaware, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we went to Wilmington, Delaware. And it's this is a devious predatorial action that this man committed. And it's a sick side of our addiction when people go down that road and they get into felony state issues. That's a real problem with, a rapist isn't necessarily a predator. It could be just a single action. So it all depends. There's so much that goes into it, the criminology about it.
Yeah. One of the things I reread that section of the book the other day, and you had talked about how he had a binder full of pictures of young men posing, and it was all getting their muscles ready for lifting events and stuff, and looking good. And it sounded like the further and further you went into this binder, the more and more clothes got taken off.
Correct.
Yeah, and that he was these were boys that were initiated into the special club, and it
Correct.
sounded like you wanted a place to belong. And
correct.
And so I'm going to be somebody. I'm going to be one of these special people. And again, you're at the age of 12 and just not knowing what that entailed.
Correct.
Yeah. So the photography aspect I understand, and then it got into physical sexual stuff with him.
Yeah, it did. It got into the once we got to the hotel, he wanted me to perform oral sex on him.
Yeah.
Before we went to dinner. It's like, you can't eat until you do this.
Wow.
And I was like, that was the premise. We're not going anywhere until you do this. And it was my first introduction to sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I was bewildered. I was scared. I was shocked. I was lost. And on another side of the coin, I was stimulated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And away we went to dinner afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's how the evening began. And then it just got a little
darker and darker. Yeah.
It started getting darker from there.
Yeah. We don't need to go into the details of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounded pretty horrific. And so when I got your book and I'm reading this, and I was fucking crying just reading that section. Yeah, so just talking about it now, I'm getting emotional about it.
And you have a son.
Yes, who is 12 years old. 12 years old. So
unbelievable.
Yeah, so I have the age right in mind.
Yeah.
So, but later in episode 5, you had mentioned just not being able to trust men, and I completely understand where that comes from after reading that story.
Yeah.
And I want to pivot to something else in the book. But was there any other things during that time that that you wanted to cover here? Are we pretty good on that?
Well, it just ended up that after dinner was over, we came back, and before I could go to bed, I had to perform sexually again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when there was actual sexual intercourse had taken place.
Yeah, penetration,
and I got ripped apart.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no thought to my physical well-being, put it that way.
Oh, yeah.
It was just raw.
Yeah, it's like you're a vessel.
Yeah, I was there for his own purposes, and that was it. And however he achieved that, it didn't matter. There was lubrication was an afterthought.
Wow.
And it was just raw. And so that's what ended up happening that night. And then I cried myself to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move on to that summer. And that summer, I had gone to overnight camp.
Mm-hmm.
And got introduced to pot.
Yeah.
And started smoking pot like a fiend. And again, since I had no parental supervision, none,
Yeah.
I started to fantasize while I was high about the incident.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that fall, friends of mine from camp, we met in Philadelphia. We went and we saw Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah. So I brought that up on the previous episode and was wanting to get to this aspect. Yeah. So yeah.
So that was my first introduction to transsexuals, and I'm like, that's interesting.
Uh-huh.
I was high. So my brain was I was not thinking clearly. I was clearly in a hallucinogenic state.
Mm-hmm.
And, pot, good or bad, it's a hallucinogenic state. whether you smoke it, you don't smoke it, whether you like it, you don't like it, what it does to you is the same consistently with everyone who does it. It puts you into a hallucinogenic state.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to fantasize daily about my experience of the rape and about Rocky Horror.
Mm-hmm.
And that lasted all the way until I was 16 years old. And because my family dynamic, my father had gotten me a car when I turned 16 because my mother didn't want to drive me anywhere. She wasn't going to let me use her car. My brother, who didn't like me, wasn't going to let me use his car. And my father was at work. So it was kind of like, okay, well, let's get the baby a car. So my father got me a car. So I started driving around. I found these adult bookstores, and I was tall for my age. So I walked into them, and on the marquee inside these stores, they've got in the back in the 70s, they had marquees, and they would put the picture of the wrapper of the video cover in the marquees, and it'd line them all up. I was going through the marquees, and all of a sudden I hit a transsexual movie. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Ching, 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 ching. I just won the lottery. Because, it interests me. And I was like, okay, well, let me go watch that. And of course, I had pot on me, and I had been smoking, and I was totally high. And I started going to adult bookstores to watch transsexual porn at 16. That was my introduction to transsexual porn. And so it really started to develop. My whole persona started to develop around all this. And I had gotten into wanting to get more involved into that scene, that genre, from the aspect of not going to be with one, but becoming one.
Yeah. That's what was interesting for me to hear that, because I I too, I enjoy transsexual pornography, but it was from the aspect of wanting to be with one, maybe, but not wanting to be one. So
Exactly.
yeah, hearing that story from you, it's like, whoa, here's the kind of the reverse.
Right. And because here was my thinking. My thinking was that, oh well, if I had been um penetrated, if I'd been used as a woman by a man, then this was where my life was supposed to go to. This was who I was. I already had the introduction to it. So this was who I was becoming. So I started to watch the videos as if they were training tapes. Like, teach me more.
Yeah.
And then something crazy happened, which I don't think is in the book. I don't remember. At 16, I was in Philadelphia on the streets, and I got picked up by a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Was that in the book?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, it's in the book. Okay.
Well,
So I couldn't remember.
Yeah, keep going with the story.
Yeah, and he went ahead and he took me to his hotel. He took me to his house, and I was high. So his proclivity was he liked transsexuals.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had started, he was clean. He was a clean guy. He wasn't a disgusting person. He was a clean person, a wealthy person.
Mm-hmm.
At that, he came from a very extraordinarily wealthy area in Philadelphia. And I started a sexual relationship with him from the time I was 16 until the time I was 25. Every time I would be with him, I would be dressing up and as a transsexual, as a transvestite, being with him.
Yeah.
Because that's what he liked. And that's what I thought I was becoming. I thought that was that's where I was supposed to be. That's what I thought I was supposed to become.
Mm-hmm.
And from every experience that I had, it just solidified that conversation one more time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting going down that road. And then I moved to Florida when I was 25. So that was the end of that. But my desires and likes didn't shift. I found adult bookstores here down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And transsexual porn was always my flavor. And so that's basically what I continued with.
Yeah, and when we've been using a couple of different terms, transsexual and transvestite, and
right.
Kind of the difference being that the transvestite would be a man dressing as a woman.
A man dressing as a woman, a cross-dresser.
Yeah,
you would say is another term for it. Transsexual is a man with breasts.
Mm-hmm.
Who dresses, who wears makeup on a daily basis. They live as a woman.
Yes.
They have breasts, implants, and they live as a woman.
Yep.
That's a transsexual. Transvestite is just a guy who dresses up, cross-dresser, dresses up, puts on makeup, but doesn't live as a woman.
Yeah. So I've done. I think I had mentioned on the previous one that for fun I've done cross-dressing for.
Right.
Yeah, for like Halloween type of stuff, and it's funny to see me dressed as a woman with a big old beard. But yeah, my wife did my makeup one Halloween, and she did a really good job, but I still kept the big beard.
Right. And that's, I never had that experience to have that in fun.
Yeah.
It was taken away from me.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there was a purpose to it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a purpose-driven life. Introspectively, with the work that I've done with myself throughout the years, going to therapists and everything like that, counseling, the thing that I found out was that I was straight.
Yeah.
I was straight as an arrow. All of my acting out, dressing up, the smoking, all of that was all confusion. It was just all tied to confusion. And I was a confused individual who wasn't grounded mentally. And once I became grounded after I got into recovery.
Yeah.
Everything shifted.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the gift of recovery showed up.
Yeah. I recall a couple of different stories tied to the transvestitism. That's a hard word to say.
Yeah, spit out. Yeah.
Man. That you had a recurring theme of when being alone and dressing up, getting out the what you called slim feminine cigarettes and lips with a there was specific lines in there about having lipstick on the cigarette made for a sexual high.
Right.
And so you would dress like that and then find ways to masturbate like that.
It was all of the what's the word I'm looking for?
So ritual?
The ritual. It was all part of the ritual.
Mm-hmm.
It was all part of the ritual. And so much time was spent on the ritual that I got myself so worked up because of the ritual.
Yeah, yeah.
That I would just hit the edge and stay on the edge as long as I could until I couldn't stay on the edge anymore. And then I would just go over the edge.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, that was a great big part of it.
Yeah. And yeah, the last bit around that was right. And this sounded like really close to before you were hitting your epiphany on being a sex addict, because again, you weren't caught or found out or anything. It was an epiphany for you.
Yeah.
But there was a story about going to make videos with someone.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So you had been either contacted,
spoke to, created a contact. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had found this woman in New York. I forget. I don't even know how I got to her, but I had found this woman in New York that was going to be the mistress, and I was going to be the sex slave. And she did not care what I did as far as drugs were concerned, or it was totally fine with her. I could use all the drugs, any type of drugs I wanted, whether it be coke, whether it be meth, whether it be pot, anything. She didn't care. All that she wanted me for was to be her sex slave, to take care of servicing her and her clients. And I had communicated with her, and if I remember, it was like February, it was February I had my epiphany. It was like in March, I was going to go up there
Mm-hmm.
and meet with her and just like run away.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was sick. That
Mm-hmm.
was like, I was so in denial of my illness
Yeah.
and the insanity.
Yeah. When I was reading this section, I was just like yelling out, no, no, turn around. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, that was pretty. That would have been the be all to end all.
Yeah.
I would have gotten up there. I would have been away from my wife. I would have probably jumped out a window. Who knows what? I would have committed suicide somehow, because of all the torture and all the torment and harm that I caused my wife and everything else. Yeah, it would have been a bad scene.
Yeah.
Really bad. But it just goes to show you. It just goes to show you that even though this was a sick side of our psyche, there is another side to it, which is anything you can create, anything you can dream, you can create, you can make.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can't. Through my addiction, what I've learned is that anything is possible, and I can have anything, and I can create and be anything I want to be. Nothing holds me back. So there's that side, even though it came from all that sickness.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the coin is I was so mentally tough that I could create any of this, and I created it. So there's nothing to stop me from creating anything else. On a positive side.
Yeah, definitely. I want to get into some recovery stuff, but before doing that, I listen to a lot of other recovery podcasts, and one in particular, it gets pretty dark. There's a lot of people that, through either interviews or answering anonymous surveys, they talk about being victimized or raped, or things that have happened in their past, and that linkage between the trauma of an event like that and the fantasy that happens afterwards of replaying from either the victim or perpetrator standpoint, that becomes a powerful fantasy, rape fantasy. It's not that people want to be raped or want to be a rapist, but that is a coping mechanism for people who have gone through traumatic stuff. And a lot of people feel shame around that. And the horrific events of stuff like that, that's a way that the brain tries to cope with it. And for anyone out there that's happened to and has experienced shame around having fantasies like that, just know that it is something that happens to victims.
Yes,
So,
it does.
yeah.
And for myself, I can speak from my own experience. It's happened to me, and I've learned that, through my counseling, which I had good counselors, thank God. That was normal for an individual of my capacity.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a normal functioning fantasy, and it was okay. I didn't act upon it and become a rapist.
Right.
Or, to do anything to anybody else or to harm anybody else. But having those fantasies, I had fantasies of what happened to me, not of me actually perpetrating it as a perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
So I never had predatory fantasies.
Did you have any like revenge fantasies?
No,
Okay. Yeah.
no,
So I've heard that from other people that they've wanted to take revenge on their perpetrator. So
no.
okay.
I got in, did I get in contact with him?
I think there was something in the book that
I think I wanted to.
yeah,
I didn't get in contact with him.
yeah, I think he might have passed away or something.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did pass away. My wife checked that out, and she was like, he can't, because she wanted to go crack him over the head.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wanted to beat the hell out of him, literally. After I found out he had died, there was a relief had just come over me. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the witch is dead. Out of the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
The witch is dead. So he's gone. He's dead. He can't hurt anybody else.
That's got to be a sigh of relief.
Yeah, thank you. Sigh of relief is what I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of people that have had that aspect of being being an abuser have also found their way to our rooms, and some of them have been amazing people in this program, where they've been able to take the steps and rework their life, make amends to their victims. I know a few of my of people that I know from meetings that have done that. So I'm hoping that people do, if they're going through stuff like this. A lot of times there's an abuse cycle where someone gets abused as a child, and then they as an adult will carry that on to other children, and then those children carry it on to
Their children.
yeah, and that's not just in the sexual realm. It's physical abuse. My son has had in grade school had a bully, and I had told him that bully probably has parents that don't treat him well, and that guy's parents probably had parents that didn't treat him well, and so the cycle goes. So finding our way to the rooms and breaking that cycle is an important thing.
Yes, it is.
So
I'm grateful for that.
yeah. Yeah, so we've covered a lot of stuff that we didn't get to, and I wanted to talk about some of the recovery stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't have anything specific, but just covering so much of the before program stuff.
Right.
I do want to cover more of the recovery aspect, and last time we had talked about just how many of the guys in our noon meetings that you end up sponsoring and working with, and it's just super cool. And I see the folder there.
Yeah. So this is because I don't know why it's not coming in clear.
Yeah, you've got the blur filter, so it blurs your background on Zoom. So
I would turn that off.
I don't know. It's a certain function, but yeah, I could sort of see it.
Yeah. So it's so you can see it now.
Yeah. When you pull it back, it's a little closer.
Gets close to me. So what this is I have through trauma when I was younger, I got beaten up severely in my head. They had to take me to the hospital. Mm-hmm. I've got cognitive impairment,
mm-hmm.
brain impairment, and that's why I'm retired, because I can't work. But what I'm good at is doing recovery. And what I was also good at was when I was in school was detailing and setting up checklists for the work that I do. So I just applied everything to recovery as a sponsor. And I've got 3 sheets of paper in a folder. Everybody has a folder. Everybody gets a folder.
Nice.
And it's just
do you do that? Do you do that for guys that you sponsor
yes.
long distance?
Oh yeah, everybody.
Okay.
Everybody's got a folder.
Cool.
Yeah, everybody has a folder. So what I do is it's a steps checklist, and it starts out with their background. Then we do the sexual history bullet point outline. Then after we get the bullet point outline, I see their history. I'm able to discern what should be in their 3 circles.
Oh, wow.
Then they do
cool.
Then they do their sexual history essay. Then we go straight to their sponsee does the first step presentation. Then we go into, once they get to the presentation that's done, we immediately go into step 2 and 3. And so they get done with step 2 and 3. If they falter on step 2 and 3, then we have a problem. 9 times out of 100, 99 times 0.9 out of 100, I don't have a problem with sponsees because I don't do atheists or agnostics.
Ah, okay. So I would be out.
Here's the thing. Somewhere down the road, they believe that something created something. So all of a sudden, there's something there. So they get.
Chicken and egg type of.
Yeah, they get it. Whichever came first, but something came. So then we go directly into 4-step we go through the 4-step inventory intro. We do the resentments. I break down 4-step resentments, but column 1, column 2, column 3, and column 4. And we take it column by column on the page, step by step for the resentments and fears. And then on harms, they do columns 1 and then 4. Because they already know how to go through columns 2, 3, and go ahead.
Yeah. So just for anyone that hasn't gone through these steps, do we want to describe what the columns are? Column 1 would be the person.
The person, institution, principle.
And column 2 would be what they
cause.
Yeah, the cause, what they did. Column 3 would be I say what part of self was affected. That's how I describe it.
Social instincts, sexual instinct, security instinct, and their ambitions.
Yep. And then the column 4 is what's my part in it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's when that's when they find out it's like, God, I've been a real shit.
Yeah. I had difficulties with sponsee in finding his part in things. Well, my part is I think this guy's an asshole.
Right.
And so it's like, you're not quite getting the intent of the exercise, the step work. So I worked with him on step 4 for a few years, and I was patient with him, and then my patience ran thin, and I said, okay, this is what you need to do to progress. He couldn't do it, and we parted ways. And it was best for him, best for my sanity. My sponsor, my wife, my friends were wondering, why are you still beating your head against the wall with this guy? And there was something in me that just really wanted to help him. But if you can't break through and look at the introspection and find those things in yourself that are causing these problems, it's going to be difficult to progress with the rest of the steps.
Absolutely. On the second sheet, I have Then I have the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book reading assignments.
Uh-huh.
And we go through like Roman numeral 13 to page 16, the first forward and Bill's story.
Yeah.
And
So
then we discuss that.
That would be the doctor's opinion.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then we go through There Is a Solution, more about alcoholism, and discuss that. We break down the book. We just break it down and break it down into easable, chewable chunks and discuss everything. And this third sheet I have is that they get their daily readings from Voices in Recovery.
Mm-hmm.
They read the third step prayer on a daily basis when they wake up in the morning. And then their daily call to me at what time is set up. I also do there's a great part in the big book. It's on page 85. And it's the second paragraph. And it's a great paragraph. It's I have them do a 30-day activity, and it's important they do this in the very beginning. And it starts out as easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. You'll know this. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcoholics are our subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are the thoughts which must go with us constantly, where we can exercise our willpower along this line. All we wish is the proper use of the will. And I have them read that as a 30-day assignment in the very beginning as well. And the purpose is it's to ingrain in them the fact that, hey, all we have is today. You get a daily reprieve contingent upon your spiritual condition. And it's so important to get that across and get it ingrained so that they have something to stand on. And, I had a sponsee say to me today, as a matter of fact, how close he was feeling to God because he reads the third step prayer every morning.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, it's exactly accurate. That's what happens.
Yeah. I remember after completing the 12 steps and not redoing step work, and my sponsees were all stalled out. I rested on my laurels for quite a bit of time and backslid and relapsed. And it
will sneak up on you.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, I love that passage.
I don't want to go back. The insanity was crazy. All the lies, everything. It was just the insanity of, telling my wife a lie and seeing her disappointment. And it's like, day after day after day after day after day. And I was like, I can't do this to a human being again like that. I just can't do that. I can't do it to myself. I can't. I have worked so hard to give myself a happy, joyous, and free life of this addiction that I don't in any way, shape, or form want to go back there. And anybody's listening to the podcast, just know something. Any work that you do is better than no work.
Yeah.
So, what else you got?
So as you were describing a lot of it, when I did my step work, I went through basically the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous rather than the green book. I came into program before the green book came out.
Right.
I'm very well versed in page numbers from the big book and stuff, but I was wondering, have you ever listened to Joe and Charlie?
Yeah.
So I give I've got MP3s of Joe and Charlie, the big book comes alive.
Yeah.
And I give that out to to my some of my sponsees. It was easier when we were in person, and I can physically hand them a CD full of MP3s, or an MP3 if they have an MP3 player. Give them a thumb drive with all the files. And one of our meetings, I am the audio librarian, so we have a list of program CDs and stuff that people can rent out.
Mm-hmm.
And I made sure that we kept most of it is SAA, but I did want to have Joe and Charlie on there. And for anyone that hasn't heard, Joe and Charlie are two AA speakers that go around to conventions and other AA things, and they did talks about working the steps, what the history of AA and the 12 steps are about. And so as you're mentioning all these readings and stuff from the big book, it just I kept that. I still keep it on my iPod, and when I run out of stuff to listen to, sometimes I'll put them on at night, and I'm getting these messages. It really helped me. I understood the fourth step, but in order to teach how to do the fourth step, listening to those guys walk through it just made it easier for me to teach. So I handed off to my sponsees, hey, listen to this.
There was the wisdom.
Yeah.
They had the wisdom.
Yeah.
They had the wisdom, no question about it. Yeah. I used to listen to them. There was another guy I used to listen to. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Famous guy. And then I switched over to SAA stuff when I found SAA had speakers.
Yeah.
And that was cool because now I could relate to AA because it was a disease, but I couldn't relate to drinking. So now I was relating to not only the disease, but I was relating to the speakers. And yeah, so it's always good stuff.
Yeah, so a lot of the every year, the Memorial Day, which is coming up in a couple of days,
yes, it is
our annual convention, and they record speakers, they record workshops. One of my first service positions, we had cassette tapes.
Oh, geez.
At one of our meetings, and people were no longer using cassette tapes. So I'm a bit of an audio person, so I volunteered to take them all and transfer them digitally, and made.
Oh, very cool.
This is before the ISO made MP3s, and made before they made CDs. So we just transferred them to CD and kept them for our audio library for the meeting. But in transferring them, I got to listen to them all. And so some of the early 2000s, late 90s ones, the audio quality on the recordings were horrible.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, I tried to clean up as much as I could with my software at the time.
Right.
But listening to those over and over, I got to hear these speakers, and by actually going to international conventions, and now on Zoom, being able to join ISO meetings and stuff. I did a lot with area formation for California, Northern California.
Oh, wow.
So getting the areas set up, I got to do GSR meetings that's group service representatives with the ISO. And so I'm doing these ISO Zoom meetings, and I'm like recognizing people. It's like,
Yeah.
I've heard that person, and I know that person, and I've been listening to this person for
Right.
years, and now I know who that is.
Well, that guy, Bill, that
Yeah.
you did an interview
Oh,
with.
oh yeah. I meant to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill I.
I spoke to Bill's sponsor because his sponsor was
Uh-huh.
my sponsee.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was funny. I said, I said, your sponsee just went ahead and said who his sponsor was. I said, I know him.
Uh-huh.
That was Bevan,
Yeah.
San Francisco. And he now lives in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And he lived down here in Florida. And I've known him all my years. He came into the rooms. When I just began 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I was walking a path, and he was like, "Hey, be my sponsor." It's like, okay.
Nice.
And yeah, so when it came from California over to Florida, I called him up. I said, "You'll never guess what happened."
Yeah, that's so
Small world.
so funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing a virtual Zoom convention. It's going to be kind of interesting. It's weird because the host city is Columbus, Ohio. And so all the time zones, everything is set there. But so things are starting for us at like 5 a.m.
Yes.
Which will be early, but it's going to be ending earlier for us.
Right.
So I'm planning on playing guitar in the talent show. So
nice.
It should be a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm grateful that they, last year they had to cancel it because of the pandemic.
Sure.
And this year things are starting to open up, but it's still not. There are different rules in different places, and it was a weird call that they had to make, and so they canceled the in-person and did it virtually. And I would not have been able to go to Ohio, but I can go on Zoom and click the button and hear recovery for this weekend. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, good.
Yeah, I think we covered quite a bit tonight.
Okay.
So
I'm grateful.
Yeah,
Thank
me
you.
too. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate the time together.
Yeah, this is awesome. And I know you and I have been planning on doing this for a while, and it was a God moment for me. As I mentioned last week on the podcast that I put out last week, is I've got speakers that are people that I'm gonna be interviewing, but I haven't made plans. I've had topics that I want to cover, but I haven't made plans. My work life, I'm working 6 days a week, and my son's school year is ending, and just the convention coming up, and just like all these different things. And I have not been able to sit down and plan something. I record something, edit it, post it, and then it's like I can breathe. And then, oh shit, I didn't plan anything for this week. Oh God. So we're on a meeting this week, and you had put in the chat, hey, do you want to do part 2 sometime? I was like, yeah, how about tonight? Let's do it. So
last night I just fell asleep. It was over with.
yeah. Just I think tonight worked better because yesterday I was in a rush getting home from work. I had a doctor's appointment, and it's just like all these different things going on. And so Tonight I was a little bit more relaxed with the time difference. I know it's, I record usually around 7:30. So that's 10:30 on the East Coast. And so, yeah, our wires
It's 11 o'clock now.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I'm grateful for you, LJ, and sharing the stories from your book that we didn't get to in the first recording. So much appreciation. All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. See ya.
Take care, Jason.
I found it really nice to be able to circle back with LJ and cover the topics that we missed on episode 5. Getting into the molestation story, as sad as it was, I felt was important to really cover that, as well as covering the acts around dressing up like a transvestite and being interested in transsexual pornography. Those are some topics that we haven't covered so far here on the podcast, and I felt that it was important to do so. I also really enjoyed talking about sponsorship and working the steps, and the whole old school AA big book of it all. And I had mentioned Joe and Charlie, and so I wanted to make sure that I left some YouTube links from Joe and Charlie doing their big book Comes Alive.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Joe, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's truly by God's grace and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that I found in a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm sober today, and for that I'm very, very thankful. Charlie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Charlie Parmlett. I'm a very grateful recovering alcoholic.
Hi, Charlie.
Because I'm a member of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and by the grace of the power that I found in the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't found necessary to take a drink for 10,516 days today, one day at a time, and for this I'm grateful. Great to be here. Joe leaned over a while ago and he said, Charlie, this is one of the finest looking bunches of sick people we've seen in a long time. Isn't it great? We always like to say as we start one of these things that we do not consider ourselves to be the gurus of the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. We don't consider ourselves to be the experts on anything at all. We're just two old drunks, met together several years ago, found we had a mutual interest in the big book. We've studied it together for quite some time. Hopefully, we've learned a few things about it. And those few things we've learned about it, we just love to be able to share them with other people.
There are lots of different places to be able to find their talks. I had originally found them on an AA recovery podcast, but there are many different ways to find them once you get an understanding of who they are and how they teach the big book. It's a lot of fun. It really helped me a lot in learning how to work the steps for myself and also how to teach working the steps as a sponsor to a sponsee. And as I had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that I am looking forward to the international convention that is coming up Memorial Day weekend. I am posting this the Friday right before the convention, and I am really excited and a little bit nervous to do all the meetings and workshops and the talent show and to be able to see a lot of people, see and meet a lot of people. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm also really excited that we are super close on launching the sexaddictsrecoverypod.com website. There's a lot of labor that goes into something like that, so super close. But you can always get in touch with us here at the podcast by leaving a review or emailing us at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. Like always, I thank you for listening, and I hope that you keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.